Well, how about that from Lance, Lynn, and the Cardinals? What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the evening hours of Sunday, June 30th, 2024, my last podcast of my 20s. That's right, a whole new era starting on Monday. Not quite sure how to feel about it, but we move on. It'll be good. It'll all be good. Appreciate you guys for being with me here tonight. We're going to be breaking down a Cardinals win on Sunday, as the Redbirds did find a way to split that series against the Reds. 2-0 win at Busch. We'll talk about Lance Lynn's outing as he was able to string another really good one together. How do Cardinals fans feel about his place in the Cardinals rotation right now after a couple of really solid ones in a row? Also hitting a milestone moment that we'll talk about from this afternoon for Lance Lynn. We'll tell you how they scored their runs, as there are only a couple of runs scored for the Cardinals, so that won't be a very long conversation. And we'll go down on the farm with the latest from the minors today in Cardinals baseball, as well as getting into a little bit more of a detailed conversation about Nolan Gorman, who, yes, he still leads the Cardinals in home runs, but he is really going through it right now at the plate. So we're going to have to circle back to that conversation and face the facts on where things are right now for Nolan Gorman. So that'll be something we get to on today's episode of b-schaeff Daily. Shout out to the b-schaeff Daily Gang membership. If you'd like to get involved in that, the link is in the description to this video. You can certainly do so. I would appreciate it. After wrapping up last night, by the way, I noticed that my Spotify follower count for b-schaeff Daily was up higher than I remembered it being by like a couple dozen or so. I couldn't remember exactly what the number was. I just knew it was higher than it used to be like a day ago, because I can see that and access that every day. Much lower, though, still, by the way, than our YouTube subscribers. So if y'all want to go to Spotify, follow, rate, and review b-schaeff Daily, that would be sick. But anyway, I eventually figured out that someone had asked on the Cardinals subreddit. On Reddit, there's a page for just Cardinals talk, what Cardinals podcast people like to listen to. And thanks to my guy here for the shout-out. I'm not going to out him for his Reddit username because I don't know if other people know, but he did send me a message and tell me who he was. But his comment became the top comment on the thread, where he said, talked about my podcast and said, I like Brenden Schaeffer's podcast. So I think some new Cardinals fans may have found us, which is awesome. I mean, that's great. I did think it was funny, though, that one of the more popular comments when people were asking for the name of the podcast, somebody said, the podcast needs a better name. And I said, that's probably true. Honestly, I don't know what compelled me to call it b-schaeff Daily 4.5 years ago when I started it. I think it was more like one of those deals where, if I'm trying to remember, I was like procrastinating and kicking the can down the road on knowing like I had a vision to be a daily Cardinals podcast done by someone who covers the team, boots on the ground, has media access to interview players, the whole 9 yards like that, and thinking that that would be something that maybe people would find interesting. And I like to talk. I was doing radio at the previous in my career. I wasn't doing the big show or the stuff that I had then circled back to with 590 The Fan more recently. That's over now. But that was something like a podcast I thought would be something that could fit in this space in terms of from somebody who covers a team, but to do it daily. And that was kind of the idea that I had. And I mean, I had been covering the Cardinals for KMOV since 2016, writing for their website, going to games, going to the press box, all that. But I didn't start the podcast until like 2020. I think it was like right around January 2020, if I'm remembering. And I think just not having a clever name for the podcast was holding me back for a while from starting it. So if I'm remembering right, I think it was just one of those nothing matters, the name doesn't matter, just start doing it today sort of moments. So that's the backstory with the name b-schaeff Daily. If anybody, like there are people in my life that through high school, through college, independent of one another, b-schaeff was a nickname that I had at various times. So I was like, not being the guy to give himself his own nickname, but that was part of why I put it in there. But I did reply in the subreddit and tell the guy that he was right. It's a dumb name, but I didn't know that people would end up listening to it. So I'm kind of stuck now, I guess. Anyway, I appreciate my guy for saying, hey, Brenden Schaeffer, he's that guy, talks about the Cardinals every day. Check him out. I do that, so subscribe and consider a channel membership if you want to support the grind on the content. I really do appreciate all of you for supporting this podcast, listening to it, and helping to turn it, as well as the YouTube channel, into an actual part of my growth in my career, rather than me just spending this time talking into the void. I sincerely do thank y'all. Hoping that the first year of my 30s ends up being another big year of growth for the channel and the podcast. So tell a friend, tell them about us, and get them in here. Let's build this community up. But let's talk Cardinals now. Forgive me the preamble. birthday podcast, I'm going to take a little bit of time to reflect on where we were and where we hope to go. So that's what that was. But now we're going to dig into Cardinals, I promise. Lance Lynn, is he suddenly what the Cardinals thought they were getting when they signed him? Because there was a really rough stretch, and now he's starting to settle in where he's just dealing that fastball. I read in John Denton's story, 95% fastballs from Lynn today, and that's what he does, man. Like, he'll sink it, he'll cut it, ride. He'll just bring it however he needs to bring it. And when he's spotting it, the way that he's able to mix and miss barrels, that's what's fascinating about him. He doesn't have to strike out a ton of guys. He had 6 Ks today, but it's really just about missing barrels and being able to, guys think, oh, I'm going to square this up, but nope, it's not a sinker, it's a cutter. And you thought it was, and then it kind of dips the other direction, and you'll still get some wood on it, but it won't be the type that you thought you were going to get on it. That's kind of Lance Lynn in a nutshell. And he just throws fastballs and doesn't give an F. I mean, it's great. He doesn't always have his best stuff. We've seen some ugly ones from him. But when he does have his best stuff, this is kind of what you get from him, which is a great development right now for the Cardinals during a stretch where both Gibby and Michael has had rough ones recently. Sonny, too, for that matter, was not particularly strong in his start against the Reds. So you feel pretty good about that from Lance Lynn. Look, I remember calling him repeatedly in the offseason and coming into spring. Like I said, Lynn, I think, could be the number 2 starter for this team. I know he didn't have great numbers last year. I know he gave up the most home runs in baseball last year, but that was really the worst year of his career by far. And if you take that away, even 2022, he had a sub-4 ERA, was an all-star with a 2.69 ERA in 2021. Maybe he's not all that far removed from that. I know that he could just be getting nailed by the aging curve because he is in his age 37 season at this point. And coming in, maybe that was the fear of what was going to cause him to be bad. He turned 27. He turned 37 on May 12th. So I guess it was a bit of a gamble by the Cardinals to suspect, okay, what version of Lynn are you going to get in terms of can he turn back the clock at all? At 6 innings, 2 hits allowed today, just 1 walk. He's only allowed 1 walk. That's the only one he's allowed over his past 3 starts because previous to this one, he had 2 in a row without a walk at all. And this was another shutout outing. 3.59 the ERA. I'm not saying that if you pencil Lance Lynn in for a playoff start, I'm hooping and hollering and thinking that's going to be great. I think it could be good, but it also could be a mixed bag. You don't know for sure. The confidence level, we'll see, right? He's got to, I think, do this a little bit more often. But this was really good to see. Again, especially when others that have been pitching better of late kind of took a step back over this last turn through the rotation. It is the Reds, too, so you kind of keep that in mind. But they had some games this weekend where they did score runs. Another really good outing from Lance Lynn, and hit a milestone today as he becomes the 6th Cardinals pitcher with 1,000 career strikeouts as a Cardinal. And he'll also get to career number 2,000 in terms of strikeouts for overall, including the other teams he played for. That's going to happen like pretty soon. Maybe his next start, if he has a great one, probably 2 starts from now. He's at 1,990 strikeouts, if I am doing the math correctly, because Baseball Reference says he came into today with 1984, a little Orwellian for you, and he had 6 strikeouts today. So 1,990. Yeah, he'll get to 2,000, probably before the All-Star break. Should be. So good for Lance Lynn. That's cool to have him have a nice moment like that, and only 6 to do it in Cardinals history, which is notable. So I don't know. I think that's pretty cool, and the Cardinals fans there at Busch gave him a nice ovation, which was nice to see. Ryan Helsley, number 30 in a row, still the club record for consecutive successful save conversions, and he adds to that record list by today tying Lee Smith for the most saves all-time by a Cardinal before the All-Star break in a single season. Surely he will pass him and be able to hold that record by himself, and that one's not pertaining to having to do it in a row. So even if he blows a save before the break, as long as he picks one more save up, Ryan Helsley will take that record by himself as well after tying Lee Smith today. And this guy is going to get paid, y'all. Like, just be ready for that. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's the Cardinals just ponying up to sign a reliever. Because, look, if he ends up saving like 60 games this year and has a sub-3 ERA, teams are going to notice that, and his agent is going to notice that and say, hey, this thing is a year away from free agency. Do it one more time, which is the hardest thing to do when you're a reliever. The best thing for Helsley would be if this was his free agency year, because that's what would get him paid. But you have to do it again and stay healthy, and all those things are difficult, which I know is a reason that a lot of I don't know if it's forward thinking or folks that think a little bit outside the box, sort of Cardinals fans have said, look, trade Ryan Helsley while his value is at its highest. When you are the Cardinals and you are trying to, like, your public-facing stance is you're trying to make the playoffs, you cannot trade the closer who leads baseball in saves and hasn't blown one since, like, March. Like, you just aren't going to do it. I understand it, and I'm not saying it will be impossible that a year from now there won't be a moment. Like, we could be looking back and going, oh, they missed their window to trade him because maybe an injury or maybe ineffectiveness or whatever. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying with relievers, that's always a possibility. So let the good times roll is what I would say with Ryan Helsley. Enjoy it because he is really, really good at what he does and is going to be compensated for it appropriately as long as he stays healthy, man. That's got to be the key. And look, I think part of what can allow him to have this level of success, and we know there's been a little bit of spotty command at times with the fastball, and that's something that I think he'll continue to work through and continue to fine-tune. But because the Cardinals took that step to say you can be a closer and that's what you are, you don't have to be all things to all people at all times for us. You don't have to pitch in the eighth. You don't have to go multiple. We do prefer it if you can go back-to-backs, and it's never been a problem for Helsley. I think he just wasn't keen on back-to-backs plus multiple inning outings and just do it all. That's something that can wear down a guy's arm. Expectations for what the role would be, I really do believe, has allowed for Helsley to lock things in and be very, very good in the role that he's in. There may be some people that don't love it. I am one person that is on board saying I do think that's been the right call with the Cardinals and Helsley, and it's hard to argue when he's 30 for 30 with saves. And saves is not the end-all, be-all because, again, there have been some games where the Cardinals have been up by 3 runs, but then he gives up a couple, still gets the save, and you go, well, yeah, but the ERA went up, and he gave up 2 runs. That's not – it is what it is, man. The closer role, that 9th inning, there's something different about it. I know that it shouldn't be that way. Like, logic should dictate that it wouldn't be that way, but it is different to be able to get that last out, and Ryan Helsley has demonstrated the ability to do it, and I do think that there is a value to that in Major League Baseball today, and I believe his contract eventually is going to tell the tale on proving that to be the case, that there is value to that. Cardinals offensively today scored just 2 runs. You can't complain about a couple of knocks with RISP, though. 2 for 7 with runners in scoring position today, which is passable. It's like a 286 average. You'd like to see maybe more chances with RISP, but, you know, it is what it is. Hunter Green pitched well for the Reds, so that's going to happen. He's got a very dynamic arm, as we know. The 2 runs for the Cardinals coming on an RBI knock by Burleson, and then Mason Wynn had one, and he also hustled out to make his a double, RBI double. Outfielder wasn't getting the ball in very cleanly, very quickly, and so Wynn took advantage there. That's really it for the offense, though. Pedro Pajes had a 3-hit game, his first as a big leaguer, and has the average there pretty close to 200 now, over 190. But that's basically all that happened. Combined with a well-pitched game, the thing ended pretty quickly. I think 2 hours, 17 minutes on the game time for Sunday afternoon at Busch. I was not at this game. I had my nephew's birthday party. Him and I share the same birthday, July 1st. So he had the party today. It was a bowling birthday party, and I had some fun because my son, he'll turn 2 in September, but not quite big enough to do the bowling yet. Even if you brought him up there with they have like these ramps that you can use, and the kid can just put the ball on there and push it down the ramp. And I'm not really into that because I think still the ball can go in the gutter. So I was bringing him up there with me. I'm a left-hander, so I hold him in my right hand and bowl with my left. And bowling, I have a bowling background. I don't know how many people know this about me out there that listen to the podcast casually, but I bowl league every year and have been taking the summer off, but got in there, and I'll be damned if I didn't throw 5 strikes in a row with my son on my arm, and then I didn't want to put him down because I was thinking he was good luck. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. But I was watching him, and I was like, how is this game already almost over? I had to go back and rewatch some things when I got home, but I was thinking that is nuts that it went as quickly as it did. 2 hours, 17 minutes. Kind of cool. Anyway, let's talk Nolan Gorman because I did tease that we were going to spend a good amount of time on him today. 0 for 4, 3 Ks. I hate to talk too much negative on a day where the Cardinals did win, but you look at it, they split the series against the Reds. It was the best case scenario coming into Sunday, right? You would have preferred to have won this series, but anytime you play a 4-gamer, unless it's the Rockies, I'm not letting the Cardinals off the hook for splitting that 4-gamer a few weeks ago, but otherwise, it's possible to not get the win. You know, you didn't lose it, you didn't win it. It's different when it's a 3-game series because it feels like the sky is falling when you drop 2 of 3. That's a .333 win percentage. And when you win a series, 666. Nobody's going to maintain a 666 throughout a full season, so don't lose series. But if you split a 4-gamer, it was frustrating to see it play out the way that it did, but the Cardinals weren't too competitive in the 2 losses they had in the series, and the 2 wins they had, they did by the hair on their chinny chin chin. So it is what it is. The offense has to be better. Like, that is the overarching picture of what we're trying to say here. But that's why I wanted to talk some Nolan Gorman, because he is one of the guys that's supposed to be catapulting this offense and performing as a central figure within this offense. And today he was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, continuing a trend that is, I said yesterday, I'm not going to read. I talked Gorman a little bit yesterday. We're going to talk more about him today. When I brought him up yesterday, I said we're not going to read the stats off of the recency of what his, like, 4 for 64 or 4 for 70, whatever it had devolved into. Now we are going to have to read some Gorman stats, because it's pretty bleak when you can look at his last 15 games, and this might not even be the whole thing. But MLB.com breaks down these stats in quick bites. Last 7 games, last 15, last 30. And Nolan Gorman, for his last 15, 0.82 is the batting average with a 143 slug. 4 for 49. But if you take it back even further, I think you can get it to about, and again, this is arbitrary endpoints, so it's not fair. Like, I'm going to make it look as bad as I can, so I'm going to skip a day where he got a hit, that sort of thing, and then start it on a day that he didn't get a hit. June 8th, it looks like, and I usually use Baseball Reference for these, but for whatever reason, even yesterday's game on the 29th is not up on here on his game logs. But anyway, 0.61 from June 8th to June 28th was his batting average, 4 for 66. Then yesterday he went 1 for 3. Today 0 for 4. So that's adding a 1 for 7. Some quick math. He's 5 for his last 73. That's like an 0.61-ish average. 0.62, something in there. 2 home runs, 32 strikeouts. Has struck out in, and then now it's up to 35 or so strikeouts in his last 73 at-bats. He's basically got a 50% strikeout rate over the past 3 weeks or so, give or take. And he's not providing, I mean, he's got 5 hits since June 8th. So it's been extremely, extremely bleak. And I had said, move him down to number 8. There's maybe no too low when it comes to Gorman. I would still bat Ciani 9th, because I like the speed element. When he does get on, it's kind of like a second leadoff guy from that perspective. Even though he doesn't get on at a leadoff man clip, I think people understand where I'm coming from with that. I said I'd bat Gorman 8th, but then you go lefty-lefty, because Ciani's a lefty, so that's I think why he lands 7th. But anyway, I've been for weeks saying Gorman can go down the lineup. That's totally fine. You want him to be a chief contributor. He hasn't been. You just have to live in reality when it comes to that. But I have to acknowledge my guy Damien, who is one of our channel members on the b-schaeff Daily Gang here on YouTube. And he sent me a message yesterday, and I got to be honest, when I saw his message yesterday stating that Ollie's going to have to justify why he plays Gorman every day, that was Damien's point, my response was a little terse, I'll admit, because my thing is, like, it can be a little overwhelming to pick at each individual spot of a roster every day and have scathing takes on it all the time. For me, that would not be sustainable. I realize for fans, it's the passion that comes through, and I sometimes have to do a better job of just understanding and recognizing that. Love you, Damien. I do. But my response was basically to Damien, my point was that I don't know that I am willing to leave Nolan Gorman on the bench to rot, because I'm not sure right now who the obvious players to put in that I know are going to be better options. And that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, because anybody is going to be better than 5 for 73. I think even Victor Scott was doing better than 5 for 73 when he was here. So I understand that. But the other side is any one day could be the day that Nolan Gorman goes back to being the guy who still leads the team in home runs. That's what's so damn difficult about this one, because even as he's been largely useless for the better part of a month, he still leads the Cardinals in home runs. That's how hot he can get. That's how capable of carrying your lineup he is when he's on. But we have to, again, and I don't even remember who had said it, but it was early in the year, and there was somebody on Twitter that was sort of poo-pooing this idea that, oh, we always talk about Gorman being so streaky. I think that's overplayed. He's not, and here's the stats that show it. And I was like, you might be the smartest person in the world. I don't remember if it was a blog or who said it. I'd give credit if I did. But I remember seeing that and thinking, I don't know, man. He is that streaky. As streaky as you think he is, he's that streaky, and then maybe a little bit more than that. So it's part of the Nolan Gorman experience to go through this. But I thought the idea, maybe the Cardinals thought and hoped too, that as he got a little more mature into the league, the length of when he slumps could be cut down by his better practices. But we are seeing about as bad of a slump. It seems like he has one every year at the big league level that's kind of like this. I'd have to go back and look and see if this one mirrors what had happened in the last couple of seasons, but each year, this is year 3 for him in the bigs. It kind of had this sort of vibe to it where there was a spell through the season where you just could not, and I get it. I understood where Damian was coming from, because I too have seen Gorman be a turnstile back to the dugout for several weeks. And it's happened in each of his seasons, as I mentioned. But I realistically just have a hard time with it, because for this one, there has to be, at least I think, and tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong. Cardinals fans, you can let me know in the comments. To me, I always am catered a little bit toward the level of willingness to have him play through the slumps and weather the storms in order to arrive at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? But I also understand not wanting to see him in there every day if you're a Cardinals fan, because these outcomes have been brutal. And Damian messages me saying, well, how can Ollie keep playing him every day? And I sort of took it like, okay, another deal where Ollie is getting blamed for something that's not necessarily on him. Like, he's not going up there and taking these ABs for Nolan Gorman, that there's personal accountability to that. Now, Ollie does make the lineup. He chooses that he gets to be in there and win. That's absolutely true. But when this roster was built, it was built with an eye on Nolan Gorman being a massive contributor, not a guy that Ollie Marmol needed to wonder should he play or not today. And Ollie has already moved him down to number 7. I think 8 would be more than appropriate, other than the lefty-lefty situation that you create. And if Wynn's not in the lineup, which sometimes happens, Crawford's down there as well. So there are some things you have to figure out with that. But I think his occasional benchings, that could be more than appropriate. You just don't want to see him become a paperweight on the bench, in my opinion, because then I don't see now the light at the end of the tunnel for how the Cardinals are supposed to get him out of the slump and be able to enjoy the benefits of when he's carrying your lineup. And the moment that starts happening, you go, okay, move him back up for a while. And then when he starts, not being able to hit water if he fell out of a boat, then you move him back down, or you bench him sometimes in matchups that you don't think are conducive. But it's just so hard because we know what he's capable of doing. And other than just hiding him at the bottom of the lineup, the next choice is that Ollie Marmol can make anyway, is to bench him. The next choice that John Mozeliak could make, maybe Memphis. Now, big picture with Gorman, you're seeing why my willingness to capitalize on his value, or I guess I should say the perception of what we thought his value was in the offseason, was where my take lied on this issue. I said when you compare him to Brendan Donovan, you're talking about, can the Cardinals trade for a legit starter to make him the number 2 to Sonny Gray? I said I'm not trading Brendan Donovan in this, or really any scenario. I flat out insisted I would not entertain Donovan in trade talks if I were the Cardinals. That did not used to be the consensus take, I don't think. I think it more so is at this point in time with the way that Gorman's going. But again, I felt like an idiot, right? When he was hitting 6 homers on a road trip and 10 homers in 12 games or whatever it was. How dumb did I look then? It's got to stay grounded in where we're at on these things, because a lot can happen in a 6-month baseball season. That's why I try not to do too many hot takes. There are people right now that they want Gorman sent to the gulag, and I get it. I think you do have to, as Ollie Marmol, make adjustments and realize what you're seeing right now. But man, it's got to be frustrating when you know what he's capable of when he's going right. But he's not going right. With Gorman, it is the good and the bad. You got to take one with the other. Leading the team in homers, but has a lower OPS than Matt Carpenter. It genuinely wouldn't take too many more days of him going down and Michael Ciani or even Pedro Pajez going up on the OPS for them to meet in the middle. And that's why I've said Gorman's season, that's kind of like empty calories. One of the lowest batting averages in the league. And people have said, well, honestly, if you take away the stretch where he was otherworldly, it's really an ugly set of circumstances, because There's nowhere to hang your hat on if you take away the one stretch that was like 2-3 weeks long, maybe not even that long, where he built up a lot of the numbers that he has at this point. So what's the solution then? I don't know if I can pin it on Ollie Marmol. Like I said, frustrating. You have this guy who's just sitting the bench, but you know what he's capable of. It's hard not to pull that trigger, especially when, who are you wanting to see get the starts? And there is a solution to it. I think right now it would be Donovan plays second base. Dylan Carlson gets more starts. But it's hard to get up for Dylan Carlson, even though the numbers have been better recently. But he's still hitting like 190 with a 540 or 550 OPS or whatever it is. So overall, it's not like Carlson has been, he's 198 with a 515. The OPS is lower than I had realized. So it's hard for me to kind of get up for that argument, to be able to act like I believe in it. Brandon Crawford, Jose Fermin, Thomas Ajacey is not dictated a call up at this point with his numbers this year, which hopefully he can get it back on track and become a guy that can eventually get up here. People might say, call up Cesar Prieto. He's a good hitter and a little older in terms of prospect pedigree. What's his age, I wonder? Is he 25? Might even be 26. He turned 25 in May. So, but whatever. I mean, he's been in AAA doing a nice job. I don't know that he's going to come up, though, and be better than a 700 OPS, which Gorman hits a homer tomorrow. Well, he won't hit one tomorrow because tomorrow's Monday and they don't play. If he hits a homer on Tuesday, his OPS will be like 700 again, and you take the good with the bad. So that's why if there was an obvious solution, and maybe Tommy Edman ends up being that solution, he sprained his ankle or rolled his ankle or whatever he did, taking a grounder. So obviously they're having him work on infield stuff to be able to be versatile when he comes back in whatever role they need. Maybe it's as simple as Edman just slots back into second base. I remember the day that he spoke at winter warm-up in January, and the wrist stuff, it was the first time it was being talked about, Tommy Edman. And, everything was like hunky-dory then. Oh, yeah, I'll be ready to go. I just, no timeline, but my progress is good. We're going to get there. And obviously, it's been a nightmare. It's July 1, and he's not ready yet, hasn't played this year. Again, I hearken back to anything you get from him in the first half before the All-Star break is a bonus. Consider it that way, and you won't live your life being mad about Tommy Edman's status every day. But I remember being there at winter warm-up and Edman leaving the podium, and it may have been John Denton that was still standing there or somebody, and made a comment that was kind of tongue-in-cheek about, they're talking about you being the center fielder. That'll probably not happen. And Edman goes, I know, it's, I'm used to it at this point. It doesn't bother me. I'll just end up bringing all my gloves, and we'll see what happens. Even when they had the plan in place that, yes, he's going to play center field, you knew in your heart of hearts something would happen that it really wouldn't come to fruition, and that's kind of where we are. Maybe that's the answer, though. Edman to second and Gorman take a spell in Memphis to try and sort things out the way that Jordan Walker has had to do. Ideally, this is not the place the Cardinals would be living with the guy that leads the team in homers right now, but progress as a young player develops is not always linear. It's rarely linear. You don't have a good year, so then that means next year you're going to get better and have a great year. Sometimes you go backwards. Nolan Gorman has gone very far backwards to this point, and it's not great, but, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Maybe what he just needs is not a send him down, but, bench him from time to time and do some things behind the scenes in order to find it back. I'm not really sure how viable that is. Hey, you're not going to play, so that's going to help you get better. How much can you do behind the scenes to make that sort of impact? I don't know. The Cardinals would have to determine that. But if it really does get, and it has gotten bad, Memphis, I guess, could be an option. I just say realistically right now, I don't see a ton of guys that I'm going, oh, yeah, obviously put that guy in over Nolan Gorman, even though, as I acknowledged, anybody can go 5 for 73 if they're at a big league level or even the AAA level. Somebody can come up and go 5 for 73 with 35 strikeouts. So it's frustrating. Let me know. You can vent your frustrations in the comments, and I promise to be nice and to be understanding that it is. It has been difficult to see from Nolan Gorman lately. All right, so before we go down on the farm, and I will play the drop, I don't think anybody said anything in the comments yesterday, the sound effect. It's not really even a sound effect that I created, but I am going to play that again and see if anybody has any thoughts on it. It's extra dumb, but I like it. But before we do that, let's talk Jacob Boziokovic, because the Cardinals recalled, or I don't know, they selected the contract, I think technically, of the 30-year-old relief pitcher who came up originally with the Rockies as a first base / third baseman and then reinvented himself as a pitcher. Back in 2021, Boziokovic was with the Cardinals in their minor league system, had some solid progress to where you thought maybe this guy could end up reaching the bigs at some point. Got injured, though, in 2022, and I guess was out of the org at that point. Indie ball in 23. Independent ball was not playing affiliated minor league baseball at that point last year. And then the Cardinals brought him back. He's got solid numbers in Memphis this season. So here he is as the Cardinals continue to carousel their relievers. We did say Saturday night on the podcast that Gordon Graceffa would not be here by Sunday morning simply because he threw over 4 innings and like 67 pitches on Saturday. So there was just no way that the Cardinals were not going to churn that spot. And they've done it with Kloffenstein, who is back in the rotation. I wasn't going to talk about him down on the farm today simply because he didn't have a great start, but like 5 innings, 4 runs. But they're continuing to just bleed dry the Memphis rotation and the Memphis pitching staff, but then they send them back, and they got to stay for 15 days once they're back down. So the Cardinals have gone further down the list to Jacob Boziokovic, who, 30 years old, former position player, is going to get his opportunity here at some point. I think he'll be on the roster for a few days, probably. We'll see if he gets into a game. The first time Ryan Ludus was on the roster, he did not get into a game. Today was good to see, by the way. I didn't mention too much about the bullpen ride to get to Helsley, but Kittredge, Romero, Helsley, the Triumvirate, was in their form today. Kittredge did have a walk, but recorded a couple of outs. Then the lineup turned to where it made sense to go JoJo. He got 4 outs, no hits, no runs, no nothing allowed, no walks, and then that led into Helsley. So no chance for Boziokovic to come in today because the Cardinals had their Triumvirate looking like it looked during the early portion of the season with all guys. I mean, I think it was only 1 base runner between the 3 of them that was allowed, and Helsley had the 2 strikeouts. So that's 3 innings, 1 base runner. Pretty good stuff by the back end today for the Cardinals. But certainly an interesting story for Boziokovic, and we'll end up seeing, obviously, what happens as far as his long-term viability. Like a 3 ERA, I think, that he had in AAA Memphis. I'm trying to pull it up here now. Let me grab it. Somebody play the elevator music or the Jeopardy theme would be good. Just imagine in your head that that's what's going on right now. This season and it's so funny, the Baseball Reference page, I have to scroll down because the top half of the page is his hitting numbers, and he hasn't taken an at-bat this year. 3.00 ERA in 25 games, 30 innings. He's got 38 Ks in those 30 innings in the minors. 22 walks. I think everybody walks people in the minors. That ABS is the devil. I don't know what it is, but Boziokovic, he is the new Cardinal reliever. The Cardinals, to make room on the roster, had to designate for assignment a man whose name that I've never said on the podcast until now, Colton Ingram. The Cardinals designated for assignment. Apparently, he was on the 40-man roster, and I'll admit this on the podcast, I had never heard of this guy until today. At no point during the last month and a half, apparently, did I pull up the grid or the Cardinals 40-man roster just to kind of take a look-see and find that this individual named Colton Ingram was on it. And I did some digging, and I was like, how is this possible? The Cardinals had a player on their 40-man that I had not heard of. The reason for that was that when they picked him up off of waivers, it was May 10th, which was that weekend in May that I didn't do any live shows because I was a best man in a wedding. So the Cardinals had picked up a guy that escaped my radar for like 50 days, and it was because I was just off the grid the one time that they did something, and I never heard of Colton Ingram. I'm like, they designated who today? This guy, that's a made-up name. They don't have a Colton Ingram on their 40-man roster, but they did, and I just had missed it. So that's kind of fun. It reminds me, I forget who it was. Now I'm going to want to go back and look at it. It was September 2022, and there was some roster move that the Cardinals made. I think they designated a pitcher for assignment. Okay, I found it. Junior Fernandez was designated for assignment on September 5th, 2022. and it was like the very end of the month or something, maybe October 1st, if they were still playing games on that day. It was some point later where the Pirates picked up Fernandez, or he was pitching against the Cardinals, or something happened. And I saw a tweet, I think Jeff Jones tweeted, "Old friend alert," about Junior Fernandez because of somebody picking him up, or maybe they were dumping him too. Whatever it was somebody else, another team related to Junior Fernandez pitching. And I was like, what do you mean, old friend? Is Junior Fernandez not still on the Cardinals? But my son was born in like that week, and we were in the hospital all week with some complications after the fact. And I absolutely, for about a month, missed that Junior Fernandez was not on the Cardinals anymore. Like maybe it was even during the playoffs that the Pirates claimed him on waivers from somebody else or something. Whatever it was, I'm not even going to bother looking it up. But it reminded me of that because I'm like, Junior Fernandez isn't on the team? When did that happen? Oh, right. It happened the longest week of my life. And most rewarding, of course, but still the longest. Same thing, though, when it comes to Colton Ingram. So, sorry, if this is where you get all your Cardinals news, you never knew about Colton Ingram because I didn't ever hear about Colton Ingram or know he existed, for that matter. Anyway, okay, let's do the fun part where Brenden moves like a cow. It's time to go down on the farm. Down on the Farm, where we talk Cardinals minor league action from Sunday, is brought to you by, well, it's not brought to you by anybody, but it could be you if you want to sponsor it. Okay, let's talk Memphis first. Luken Baker, Luken hit number 23 today. Another bomb for Baker, up to a 920 OPS on the season with Memphis, and that's really after a brutal start for him at the beginning of the year. I want to see him up, man. I don't have the answer. I don't know the solution or the way that it happens, how they get him here, whether it has to be via trade. I just think he's deserving of a look. At this point, I think he deserves to play some big league baseball. I don't want to see Luken Baker turn into that guy. He's already 27, turned 27 on March 10th, where it's like he's 30 years old and it's a nice story when he gets called up at 30. No, like just let's see a way to make this happen for Luken Baker. I think he could be a legitimately solid DH. In an era where like offense is harder to come by across the game, it seems, batting averages are lower, production feels lower, pitchers are better, pitchers are winning more often. Luken Baker, I'm not saying he's going to when he gets a shot, but would it shock me if he came up and had like a 780, 790, maybe an 800 OPS at the big league level, hitting some taters, being a DH? You know, he could, I don't know, his first base defense, whatever. He's a DH. It's fine. I still think there can be a value to that in the modern game. If a guy's hitting with an 800 OPS, beggars can't be choosers, and I'm not looking that gift horse in the mouth. Now, he could come up and be more like a 6-something OPS who doesn't play defense, and then he's got no value, and that's kind of what he did in his cup of coffee with the Cardinals last year. I don't know. I think he has the potential to be more than that. And if he doesn't, do it now so that he can go make some real money over in Japan or Korea or something and get a contract there once he sees that maybe it's just not going to happen for him here. I would like to see him get a look. But anyway, that's what I got from Memphis. Klopfenstein didn't pitch that well. It is what it is. Springfield, big day for Jimmy Crooks at the plate. He's the catcher down there in Springfield, Double-A. A single short of the cycle, which is a little bit nuts. 3 hits, had a double, a triple, and a home run. Pretty solid for the catcher, who at Double-A this year has an OPS now around 850. So that's nice to see. 22 years old. Cardinals prospects or minor league depth in terms of catching, pretty good. Like Pages comes out of relative nowhere to most people. There are definitely people who follow the system who knew about Pages last year at least, but like decent hit tool at the minor league level, still coming along a little bit at the big league level, but defensively it's been marvelous. And again, he was behind the plate today for Lance Lynn, caught the game, and right now you can only really look at that Michaelis start from earlier in the week that was a total dud that has been bad among the ones that Pages has caught recently. So Jimmy Crooks, another guy to kind of keep on your radar in terms of a catcher who's got some pretty good numbers offensively down in Double-A. And it was the Double-A debut for Quinn Mathews, the draft pick out of Stanford. I always remember him as the guy who threw 156 pitches in a college playoff game with Stanford. And it was like, wow, that's interesting. But it also is nice to kind of know that, look, he's just a workhorse type. He's kind of throwback. He'll throw pitches. He'll throw innings. And he's one of those that maybe the Cardinals don't have to keep the lid on too much because he was a multi-year collegiate player who's a little bit older. So when they first had him at like the low levels of the minors, I think he started in low A. He's 23, almost 24 years old. He'll turn 24 in October. Like, that's way higher than the average age of that league at 23, turning 24 years old. According to Baseball Reference, he's 0.9 years old higher than the average age of that Florida Coast League. But had a 1.47 ERA, struck out 52 batters in 30 innings, so they bumped him to Peoria. And in Peoria, which is high A at this point, 2.68 ERA, 43 innings, 58 strikeouts. So they bumped him up to Double A now, and he's put together some nice numbers so far in just 2 starts. And today was another example of that for Quinn Mathews. 5 1/3 innings, 2 runs, none of them earned. I think the second one was actually scored, given up by a relief pitcher, so Mathews wasn't even on the mound. But in either case, no earned runs today. Did walk 3, only 3 strikeouts, but good to see him holding his own, if nothing else, at the Double A level as he continues to rise levels. That's good to see. Again, going to be 24 years old, so it's not like he's a spring chicken in terms of, like prospect age. But this is good to see that he elevates a level, can still continue to get guys out. Let's see how he acclimates there over a few more starts. I think with all these guys that are having success at Double A, Quinn Mathews now I'll put into that bucket. Tink Hence, obviously, when healthy, still kind of working through some things. Cooper Jerpy is another name of a guy who it seems like every week he is throwing another hitless outing into the 5th or 6th inning. Just continuing to do some really, really good things for Double A. You look at this crop of guys, and again, we'll wait and see what the deal is with Tink Hence. He left his start on the 23rd after just an inning. Was a little bit concerning, and I haven't heard anything since then. I'll try to do some digging in the next couple of days, but these guys are maybe making an impression to where we can start to think about them in the context of what's it going to look like and when in the big leagues for guys like Mathews, Tink Hence, and Cooper Jerpy. I do think it's too early to anoint them for 2025 in a big league rotation spot kind of way, but I like that any of these guys are ascending to the point where if they finish strong this year, they could come into spring training next year at a minimum with a chance to really get noticed at big league camp in 2025 in February. Like they're inching close enough to where if nothing else, they'll get longer looks, have more of a genuine chance, not like to make the team, but to make an impression at least. So we don't want to put a timeline on it. There is a chance, though, that you've got some good ones in this bunch if you can develop them and continue to get them on that track, which is why you don't want to rush them. But guys like Quinn Mathews, like he's the one of the 3 that I think could actually make it the soonest, just considering the experience and the age and the caliber of his arm as a workhorse type of guy in college. Doesn't really scare me as far as the innings. That's kind of what he does. So, but we'll see. A chance to develop some of these guys. This could be that trio could be the crop. And guys like Tekoa Roby have had, a little bit of a setback this year in terms of some injury, not really quality performance, only made 7 starts so far. I think he's on the shelf right now with injury. But that group of 3, Tink Hence, Cooper Jerpy, and I'm going to put Quinn Mathews into it, could be maybe that next crop. As right now we see guys like Kloffenstein and Graceffo, and maybe McGreevy is going to get his shot in the big league bullpen at some point. And we try to figure out what are these guys and where do they fit in the organization long term. That next group could be on the rise to where I'm not going to say 2025, but I won't count it out for that. I just don't think you should put the clock on it that way. But by 26, certainly I think you could end up seeing the elevation of all 3 of those guys if their paths take them to the level of big league starter. So we'll see. But that's down on the farm. Appreciate you guys for indulging me with the silly cow drop. But that's the level of production you get with B-Schaeff Daily. Eventually, this show, I would love to think that 5 years down the road, this show is a lot more well-produced and a big prominent part of my career, and that would just be great. But for now, enjoy the homemade cow sounds that I did into the microphone and then recorded it, and now I'm going to keep putting it in the episodes. All right. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening. That is going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you so much for all the support. Monday, there is no Cardinals game. It is my birthday. I will be on the big show solo, so we'll talk a lot of Cardinals, I'm sure, on KTGR. I say solo. Andy won't be there. Producer Chris will be there shooting the breeze with me. So I may post something from that to the YouTube channel, but I do not know that I will record a B-Schaeff Daily tomorrow night simply because there won't be anything new. and I will hopefully be drinking a beer or 3. So that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much, as always, and we'll talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily. Peace.